Okay, welcome back, kiddos. Now we are talking about 1.2 segment addition. So we're going to be talking about stuff like this. So if we take this part and this part, we're asking how much the whole thing is. So let's get right into it. Okay, so what is segment addition? Okay, so we're going to take two parts, or taking parts of a segment and just adding them together. So if it has two parts, we just add those two parts together and be the same as the whole thing. Okay, so here's the key of what we're going to think about today. Part plus part equals whole. Okay, so let's think about this. If we have this line over here, where point A is between A and C, right? Point B is between A and C. Okay, so we're going to say this part, which we're going to say is segment AB, right? Plus this part, which we're going to call segment BC, is equal, so this part plus this part is equal to the whole thing, which is going to be from here to here, which we would call AC, right? So the part plus the part equals the whole, right? And so that's the basics of what we're talking about today. This part plus this part equals the whole thing, right? So actually, let's do this. I'm going to say this part plus this part equals the whole thing. All right, part plus part equals whole. All right, so if we got that, then we're in good shape. Okay, so let's take a look at how we measure distance. Okay, so distance on a number line. So if you see a number like this, I'm going to ask you plot 2 and numbers -6 on the number line below. Okay, so you should have done 2 and -6. And now what's the distance between the 2 points? Okay, well, the distance between the 2 points you can just do like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, the key is we want to make sure we start with 0. So we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Common mistake is to start with 1, and then we would get an extra answer. So start with 0, then 1. So the answer is 8. Okay, now what about this? If we see this line, this one's going up and down, right? It says plot -7, -1 to the line over here, right? So -7 would be down here, right? And -1, we know that that's 0, so it has to be below it, right? So the distance, once again, we're going to count. So I'm not going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to start with 0, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So the distance on that is 6. Okay, so here's what we're going to recognize on this. This line that goes straight across, left and right, that's called horizontal. Okay, so if it's a horizontal, just count. Okay, this line, this over here, that's called vertical, right? So if it's a vertical line, just count. Okay, so if we don't know, then this is for anything. Okay, this is called the distance formula. So this would actually work if we were working with a horizontal line or a vertical line. So we're going to use a distance formula if we don't have a picture. Okay, so they're going to ask us, what's the distance between the 2 points rounding to the nearest tenth? So these 2 points, right, if we graph those, what's the distance, okay, to the nearest tenth? So let's talk about that first. So the nearest tenth, that means 1 decimal place, right? 1 decimal place. Okay, so here's our steps to do it. Let's go and write the steps over here. So step number 1 is we're going to label our points so we're going to label our first point x1 and y1, right? Because we know x comes first, then y. And our second point x2, y2. So if that's we're going to say that's our first point, that's our second point, okay? So the first point I said is x1, y1. So let's label that x1, y1, okay? And then the second point is x2, y2. Okay, next, step number 2 set up. Okay, so to set it up, we're going to use this distance formula. So we're going to use that just like that. So we're going to say that distance is equal to, and this is called the square root symbol. It's not division, square root. And we'll talk about just a second how to type that in. So it's going to be this. So let's go ahead and set it up like this. I'm going to type the plus. I'm going to put those parentheses in first. All right, so I'm going to say parentheses, parentheses, minus, plus, parentheses, parentheses, minus, and then squared on the inside. So it's very easy to miss one of these little things. If we do, we're going to get the wrong answer. And so let's make sure that we do it exactly like that. So let's type in our stuff. So we said it was x2 minus x1. So x2 is negative 1. Right, so we're not going to forget that negative. So negative 1, okay, minus x1. So x1 is negative 7. So let's write that down, negative 7. Okay, next, it says y2 minus y1. So y2 is negative 5 minus y2, minus y1. So y1 is negative 3. Okay, so let's type that into our calculator just like that. Okay, that's a double negative, right? So we're going to make sure we type that square root symbol first. Okay, so type that into your calculator. Okay, then we're going to type it in parentheses, negative 1 minus negative 7, close it, squared, plus parentheses, negative 5 minus negative 3, close it, squared. Okay, so next. Let's talk about, so if we do that, then it's going to be approximately 6.324. All right, so we're almost done. The last thing it says round to the nearest tenth. So the tenth we say is 1 decimal place. So here's how we do it. We're going to underline the decimal place that we need, right? So we need 1. We're going to look to the right of it. Okay, so I'm going to ask the 2 what to do. So 5 or more, raise the score. 4 or less, let it rest. Okay, so we see over there, it's a 2, right? So 5 or more, raise. So 4 or less, let it rest. So 2 is less than, so it's 4 or less, so we're going to let it rest. So we're going to say the answer is approximately 6.3. Okay, we're not going to say equals 6.3. Okay, that is wrong because it's not equals, it is approximately. All right, so I'm going to highlight that as well so that shows me where our answer is. All right, so on our first page, we talked about part plus part equals whole, and that's a crucial thing. All right, so we got the distance formula, and that's all we got to do is type that in to get the distance between those 2 points. All right, so let's get right into some examples. All right, so next, these are your delta math examples. So it says point G is on line segment FH. So let's draw that. Line segment FH, so that means one end is F, the other end is H. G is somewhere on the line. Okay, it says FG is 10, GH is 5. FG is 10, GH is 5. They want FH. So I'm just going to take my highlighter and I'm going to highlight from F to H. So let me know. In my mind, I want the whole thing. So here's what we're going to remember. We're going to remember part. If we remember here, part plus part equals whole. Okay, that's for overall what we're going to remember today. Part plus part equals whole. Let's put that part plus part equals whole. We're just going to highlight it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to substitute that in. So the first part is 10, right? Plus the second part is 5 equals the whole thing, which is 15. So that's our answer, is 15. Okay, simple as that. Okay, now let's go to the next level. It says point T is on segment SU, so let's draw that. SU. Okay, point T is on there. Okay, SU is 18. SU is 18. The whole thing is 18. TU is 10. Okay, TU is 10. Determine the length of ST. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight there. So some people would put 28, right? But if the whole thing is 18, then it can't be 28, right? How would we find out the whole thing? Just a part, right? Well, if part plus part equals whole, right? To figure out just the part, we would subtract the other part, right? So that would mean the part equals the whole minus the other part, right? So let's think about that. The part equals the whole minus the other part. So we're going to say 18 minus the 10, which equals 8. Okay, that's going to be our final answer. All right, next, let's get to our tougher ones. So those are relatively easy because we're just dealing with numbers. Now these are a little bit tougher, but we're dealing with algebra and we've been practicing this, so we're going to be just fine. It says point K is on line segment JL. So J on one end. We need to do a big one on this one. L on the other one. K is on the line, so K, right, somewhere. Okay, JL is represented by 4x plus 2. JL, so the whole thing. J to L is 4x plus 2. Okay. KL is 5x minus 6. KL is 5x minus 6. 5x minus 6. JK is 3x. So from J to K is 3x. Determine the length of JK. So that's what they want us to find. So I'm going to circle that. Find the length, numerical length of JK. All right, so I'm going to use this right over here to solve it. Okay, so first thing we want to remember is set it up. Right? Set it up. Second thing is we need to substitute. Because they want us to find the length of JK, and JK is 3x, right? So we got to figure out what x is and then find out what 3x is, right? So let's set it up. So we said if we just put part plus part equals whole. Let's start with that. Now let's just fill in what we know. All right, so that's what I like to do. So let's start with that. So what's the first part? First part is this, right? That's 3x. Plus, what's our second part? Second part is that right over there, right? That's 5x plus minus 6. Okay. Then our whole thing is that right there, right? 4x plus 2. Okay, so if we set it up, part plus part equals whole, now we just follow our simple steps. So we're going to remember the third step is we're going to combine like terms if we can. We can't always do it, but if we can, we want to do it. So say I underlined 3x. I can also underline the 5x, right? And I can only do each side separately, so I'm not going to try to combine it with that. So I'm going to say the 3x and the 5x gives me 8x. And then I'm going to bring down my negative 6. Okay, so then I have 4x plus 2. And now we do our normal steps, right? So now we're going to move the variable term to the other side, right? So move the variable. Okay, so we're going to do the opposite of 4x, which is negative 4x, right? Negative 4x. So we go draw our line across. So that's step number 4. All right, so then we go from left to right, just like we read a book. 8 plus negative 4, 8 minus 4 gives us 4x, right? Minus 6, that cancels out. We're reading another 2. Okay, so step number 5, we're going to move the constant, right? So we're going to add 6 and add 6. So we have 4x, that cancels, and we're left with 8. Okay, so next, the last step. On solving, we're going to divide. We're going to divide that side by 4, divide that side by 4. That cancels out. So x equals 2. All right, so now that we know x equals 2, we're almost there. So we haven't quite finished it yet. So step number 7, okay, we're going to run out of room on that, but that's okay. Step number 7 is we have to substitute back in. Okay, so what we're going to do is we said JK is 3x, right? This is JK is 3x, so that means that's going to be 3. And then we're going to substitute, since x equals 2, that means we're going to put in place of the x 2. So now 3 times 2 is 6. So that's our final answer on that. Okay. All right, next. Let's keep it moving. Point P is on segment OQ. Okay, so let's draw that real quick. Point P is on segment OQ. Okay, so O on one end, Q on the other. P is on the line. Okay, OP is 6. OQ, the whole thing. Okay, the whole thing is at 4x minus 3. Okay, the PQ it says is 3x. 3x. Okay, so let's set that up. Part plus part equals the whole. Okay, so the first part is 6 plus the second part is 3x equals 4x minus 3. Okay, so we ask ourselves if we can combine like terms. We can't. So the next step is to, we tried step number 3, can do it, right? Step number 4, we're going to move. So we're going to move that variable by subtracting 4x, right? Subtracting 4x. Okay, so that's going to give us negative 1x. Then we're going to bring down the 6. Cancels out. We have negative 3. Step number 5, we're going to move the constant. Okay, so opposite of 6 is negative 6. Negative 6 cancels out. Okay. The answer is negative 1x equals negative 9. Okay, step number 6, and divide. So negative 1 divided by negative 1 cancels, x equals 9. Step number 7, we're going to substitute. Okay, so we're trying to find the value of OQ. OQ is 4x minus 3. So OQ is equal to 4x minus 3. Okay, which is equal to 4 times something minus 3, and that something is 9, right? That's what's going to go there. So then we're going to type that in. 4 times 9 is 36, minus 3 is 30. Okay, so that's our final answer. So all we're going to basically do is just set it up. Part plus part equals whole on everything, and then we're going to remember our steps to solve it. Okay, so if you have any questions, just let me know, but I know you got this.